Welcome to the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. You are now part of a small underground movement of dent technicians from all over the world. We are on a mission to change our industry with innovation, intelligence, and skill. But because we don't rely on an insurance company to steer customers our way, we need to do things different. We need to do things smarter. We do that through a network of technicians that we call the Tactical Tech Movement. Now let's get this revolution started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here with Angela Hiley in the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. Coming to you today with a special Mother's Day edition.
Woo!
And you know how the wifey here is all about Mother's Day.
Yes, I am.
It kind of starts out with like you better not fuck it up day.
Yep. Yes.
She be trying to claim a whole week.
Oh,
Definitely you claim a whole weekend.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard a couple times, this is Mother's Day weekend.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, this is Saturday. Tomorrow is Mother's Day.
No, I get the whole weekend. We all the mothers out there get the whole weekend. Hell, we should get a whole month for all this coronavirus shit going on. For real.
Everybody's using coronavirus. Or everybody's using coronavirus. I said coronavirus like Miley Cyrus mixed with coronavirus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everybody's using that as an excuse. It seems like anything like you have an issue with, like an online order or something like that, it's so easy now to say, well, things are really being affected by the coronavirus.
Due to the coronavirus.
It's like the one thing nobody can...
Your shipment will be delayed.
Currently, nobody can debate this, you know, because it's so taboo to debate it, even though I pretty much just went on my Facebook yesterday and called everybody a bunch of diaper faces.
Oh, it'll happen. Trust me. It'll totally happen. In all honesty, it's already starting to happen.
Yeah, if you guys haven't noticed, I've been doing a lot on my personal Facebook. So if you guys aren't on my friends list, you can either follow me there, send me a friend request, whatever. But I'm doing a lot over there. And, you know, the reason why, over the last couple of years, we've seen Facebook's algorithm, it used to go towards groups. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there for a while, of course, you know, I follow this, but you would actually log into Facebook and you would end up seeing, usually your first post that you've seen was something from a group. What we've noticed is not only they've changed that algorithm inside of groups, but they're actually starting to change the group algorithm to show what they want to show in the group. Like you can no longer scroll through a group and just find like whatever post was next. Now Facebook is actually going in the groups and rearranging them and stuff like that. And I don't know. I'm not seeing a favorable outcome with that unless they change it up, unless they make it better. I assume they're trying to make it better.
I just think that they're just like fucking everything up there on Facebook. They should have just left it the way that it is because that was working the best way possible. You know, that's like, what is it they say? That like sometimes you shouldn't change things. Like if something is going really good, like
right.
Why change it?
I kind of feel like the personal Facebook on your actual personal is like starting to go off the hook again though, you know, so I'm seeing more action over there than I am in groups, and most of the dent guys, either you guys follow me or we're friends or something like that. So I've actually
homies.
I you know, guys, here's what I do. Look, I'm not married to anything. I literally...
You're married to me.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, social connection, stuff like that.
I know what you're saying.
If something came out tomorrow that was better than Facebook, I'd be fucking all over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would.
But to top that off, like, you know, I'm always going to look at exactly what's happening and I'm going to make moves based on that. You know, of course, your Facebook pages are always going to be your best to promote your business because you can actually advertise there. Mm-hmm. It's one of the only areas you can advertise. They will eventually be advertising in groups. I know it. And I would like to say that pissed me off, but it doesn't actually, because I will be all over that. I will be utilizing that as, as a marketer would.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'm not pissed off at Facebook at all, actually, because the truth of the matter is I just moved to whatever's working.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, we're on their real estate. Like, we don't call the shots. Like, when you're on Facebook, you're on their real estate. You don't call the shots. Mm-hmm. You know, you just got to move with whatever's happening there. You know, that being said, Facebook advertising, we've seen a huge dip when the coronavirus, and then obviously all the marketers start talking about that huge dip, and then we're seeing the prices going up a little bit more on the advertisement end. But by far, if you know what you're doing, Facebook has some of the best target advertising available. You know, Google's good because, you know, people are like, you know, but it's expensive. Like, Google's really expensive. In fact, we never even seen Google AdWords even drop during this time. If anything, I'm running it in a bunch of different hailstorm environments. I mean, it's expensive. I mean, real expensive, but it works. I mean, that's the thing. It works. I just don't see how anybody could sell like a cheap ass fucking product on there and actually make money. Unless they're selling a lot of them. And unless somehow they're getting the clicks really, really cheap.
Yeah.
But
well, anyways,
before
back to
I bore the shit out of her,
yes,
and probably half of you,
yeah, we need to get
on.
back to the Mother's Day edition.
Mother's Day edition. You done got me talking marketing, girl.
I know, but that's what you absolutely love. So let's read the poem John wrote to me for Mother's Day.
I am a poet, and I didn't even know it.
Yes. When we first met, I was a stoner. Even after 20 years, you still give me a boner.
Truth.
I love the way you cook, and you never really stink. Your heart and my heart are held together by an unbreakable link. When we first met, they never thought we would have worked out. But here we are still together because we've never had any doubt. Looking back, I know I married my best friend. I don't even get mad about all the money you spend, and that is true. I like it when you shovel the snow and mow the grass, and I still love slapping that big old ass. You know our love is true when we can share a laugh at a fart. Angela Hiley, you hold the key to my heart.
There it is.
Oh, and
That's
I
my new
love
thing.
it. I love it.
I write poems now. That's my new thing.
Yeah, because like John, for the longest time, would write me these big emotional letters for like birthday, anniversary, and you know.
I would write them on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, like the big letters. You know, and they'd be really sweet and very emotional, and I would be like crying at the end of them. And well, it was my birthday.
Yeah.
You wrote the first poem, and I died laughing, and I loved everything about it because even though I love all the mushy romantic stuff, like something that John has always been, he's always been able to make me laugh. Like I could be pissed off at him so bad, and the next thing you know, he does something, and I'm like dying in laughter. And I think that's something that is, I would say that's one thing that's always like kept us together, no matter what was going on, whether he was mad at me, I was mad at him. He would always do something and make me laugh. And the next thing you know, we were over it and, you know, all back to lovey-dovey.
Yeah, it's my deflecting technique. Sometimes I even say things that are a little too early, you know?
I think, but this is just something that is just your nature. I mean, there was a house, we were looking at a house or something he showed me, and they had like a shitload of American flags. Remember in the background, there was like 6 or 7 of them. And John said something about, he's like, oh, I'm going to go over there and like kiss them all.
Oh, yeah,
you had your redneck voice going on.
I was talking like about Donald Trump, you know, how he was talking about like he was at I think the United Nations or something like that, and he walked up and he kissed a flag. And of course they played it all over the news and the media because I didn't watch the fucking United Nations speech or whatever the fuck it was. And I seen this house that had all these American flags. I was like, shit, baby. I was like, I'll hang right out there and kiss all of them. I'll get up there and kiss each and every one of them flags right there. Every morning, I'll kiss them flags.
I swear, because you can go like, you can be a total redneck, hillbilly, you know, and then next thing you know, he throws out his like gangster ghetto-ness. I mean, you just got like these mixture of like your personality.
Well, I think a lot
know?
of us have that. I mean, we've
Yeah.
all grown up and we've had these phases in our life, you know.
Yeah.
And I just happen to remember each phase in great detail. And I
Yeah.
can tap into my whatever emotional space I was in at that time
Yeah.
during that phase. And I remember all of it. Like I remember back in the day. I mean, a lot of you guys, I talked about this in the podcast before. I grew up with like all black people. Like it was like where I grew up was like gangster as fuck, you know?
But
And-
you were a hippie too when I met you.
Sure. And I went into that later on later on, I think I was, I was probably around 16, 17 years old, and my buddy started growing out dreadlocks. And, next thing you know, we're heading to these, what really attracted me to the whole culture. And I wouldn't even call it hippie because, like, back then it was more of like, there was like a lot of people. It was a mixture of ravers and it was a mixture of, it wasn't really like what you would imagine as being like a hippie, like a peace-loving, sitting there playing a guitar, talking to a tree type shit. In all honesty, it was more about selling drugs and making money than just about anything. And
Yeah, but the clothing that had like a whole like total 70s hippie vibe
Sure.
with the clothing.
Sure. But at the end of the day, all of it had to do with two things: sex and drugs. Like really, I mean, it got you sex
Yeah.
and it got you drugs.
Yeah.
And that was the two things that you're looking for.
But I mean, like if you would look back in the day, like when Woodstock was going on,
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't that the same thing? But that was like a hippie generation back then.
Well, yeah, I would imagine, but I just don't think people realize that that's really at the end of the day. And no, don't get me wrong. I mean, I met some really weirdo, gather around a circle and play drum, kumbaya type people,
Yeah.
but we weren't really about that, to be honest with you. It was about it's something totally different. It was about sex and drugs for me and a lot of my friends.
Yeah.
We were trying to get laid, and we were trying to get whatever kind of pot or whatever kind of other drugs that we were doing at the time: ecstasy, LSD, eating mushrooms,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even snorting a little toot every now and again.
Oh my God.
I ain't gonna lie, man. Most of you motherfuckers
Yeah.
out there have done this shit.
Okay, so the first
Could you imagine the guy sitting there listening to this podcast that hasn't done any of that? Come the fuck on. I would almost guarantee that 90% of Americans have done a pretty fucking wide selection of drugs in their time.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember the first time the first time I did that stuff, it was with John. Like, in all honesty, I never really did a lot
That's
of that.
the last time I've done it too.
I know. I never really did anything like drug-wise except maybe smoke pot before I met John. So John introduced me into a whole different world.
We might have done a little toot.
Yeah. And I remember it was like, at the time, I thought it was like the best thing. I was like, oh my God, why is this stuff like so illegal? This is like so fucking awesome. I mean, I had all this energy. It was in the wintertime. I was running through the snow. I felt like I could run a marathon. I was talking nonstop. But then, here it goes. Then
The next day. Oh.
I remember I went home. I was living with my dad and my brother, and I told my brother, because my brother was like, "What the fuck's wrong with you?" And I told him, and he's giving me this whole lecture about like,
It's like, shut the fuck up, dude. I got a pounding headache.
it wasn't that so much of a pounding headache. It was like,
Oh,
my
it's horrible.
stomach, and it was like,
I don't see how people get addicted to that shit.
in all honesty, I thought I was dying, and I was like, you know what? I don't ever want to touch this shit again. And
the pain of the come down of that type shit
I was
is
like,
way worse.
fuck this. And you know what? I did it one other time, but it really wasn't doing the same thing like it did last time. And I was just like, screw it. Never touch the stuff again.
Yeah. I think, God, that was when we first met, before we had John.
Yeah, before I got pregnant.
Yeah, before we had John, that was like 18 years ago or something like that.
No.
Maybe it was 19. It would have
was
been 19 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good habit. That's a habit I'm glad I dropped.
Oh, it was horrible. Now, the one time John and I did ecstasy, we did a couple other times that went in the greatest, but the first time
You get some of that good, like some good ecstasy.
it was
I'll be honest with
amazing.
you. If I had really good ecstasy and I knew it was good, I would do it again.
like Molly, just
Oh
something
yeah,
that was like pure.
something that was just pure.
Yeah, I would too.
That shit.
I'd be down with
is,
that in a
like,
heartbeat.
Literally. And you know, I don't know. I'm not going to go and try to convince you guys to do ecstasy.
Because here's the
But
thing,
that-
though, you
that would
got to
be
make
the
sure you got to
only-
get some good stuff. You can't get like stuff
Yeah.
that's bunk, because I've had stuff that's bunk and it's not a good time. But the one time, like John and I did this stuff, oh, it was amazing. But it also makes you like hallucinate. And I remember we were sitting up in his room,
Like good hallucinations, not
Yeah.
like scary, you
No.
know, evil hallucinations,
No.
which I've been there
But
too.
I was sitting up there. We were sitting up there in his room, and I was sitting in a recliner. I remember how soft and cushiony and everything it was. I was like, "Oh, this is so amazing." But he had this picture, and I've told this story to some people. But he had this picture of an eagle, a bald eagle, and I remember I was so fixated on this, looking at this eagle. And anytime, you know, because it brought me a lot of joy and brought me happiness and a good feeling. But anytime I would look away from it, it would get mad and it would go, like if I look at John, like the bald eagle would get mad and it'd go, caw, caw, and then I'd have to like look back at it. And then, you know,
So she actually had the time of her life just looking at a bald eagle all night. Imagine that.
it was an 8x10 thing that you tore out of a magazine and you had it on your
Shit,
wall.
son, I was American back then.
Shoot, you were like fixated on them Christmas lights.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. You know, the crazy thing is, like, I sit back and look at this, and I've always asked myself, like, you know, because, you know, I'll give you an example. Like, her father is a person who has never done any drugs at all.
No, he's drank alcohol a couple
He's drank
times. and that's
alcohol
it.
only a couple times. And I don't want to say that he's closed-minded, but he is closed-minded. Like, there's no depth into the imagination. It's very innocent imagination, you know.
Yeah.
He's got an innocent. No, I'm a great guy, but the depth of the imagination is not there. And I always wonder, I'm like, if I would have never done that stuff when I was a kid,
Yeah.
there's no fucking way I'd be coming up with the shit that I'm doing today.
That's true. I mean, my dad, like, he loved it when me and my brother were like little.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it was all about going to the park or going to the woods and, you know, like, you know, that kind of stuff. And then
Yeah.
when we had Jonathan, you know, he absolutely loved Jonathan when he was like, I mean, he loves him, but I'm just saying, like, he was very relatable when
He was a kid.
when
Yeah.
when Jonathan was like a little kid. Now it's kind of like, I mean, obviously my dad loves him to death and him and Jonathan get along, but there's a different
Sure.
there's a shift in energy.
But you know, they actually, I read Steve Jobs' book,
Yeah.
and they talked about that. I mean, you know, people don't realize that Steve Jobs was literally in Berkeley College with Timothy Leary at the time. And if any of you guys don't know old drug culture, Timothy Leary was, I don't know whether he was a scientist or what, he was like the king of LSD back then. And he was the one who brought most of it to America. And there's actually been conspiracy theories talking about how it was through the government in some ways. But who knows about that? With that being said, Steve Jobs was with him. And Steve Jobs talks in the book how he basically said everybody was doing that back then.
Yeah.
Like everybody was doing LSD and mushrooms and that kind of stuff. And he actually said in the book that there's no way they could have actually thought of the things that they were thinking without that influence. I mean, if your mind is closed off to something bigger than our current reality,
Yeah.
meaning that like I've said things to her dad that you can tell scare the shit out of him. Like some of my thoughts and stuff like that, you know? I can't even remember what it was. The last time we were over there, I was trying to explain something to him, and he just stopped talking.
I think what it was is he had a hard time comprehending, okay, all these things that you got going on and
Yeah.
how you have a team that helps you with a lot of stuff.
He can't imagine it.
Yeah.
He can't imagine the structure of the way that I do things.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain to him that I had a team over here doing this, and these people oversee that, and you know all this kind of stuff. And it looked like his mind was about ready to explode.
Yeah.
Like he was mind blown. He was just like, "There's nothing more that I can say about this."
My dad's just a very simple man.
Yeah. But that's an example, I think, of somebody who literally has never opened their mind to that type of experience, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
And Steve Jobs was talking about how the owner of Atari, so Steve Jobs and Wozniak used to work for him, the guy who owned Ataris. And they were talking about how he used to drive around Silicon Valley in a limousine, and he would have it filled with people smoking weed, doing drugs, and they would always have their meetings in like a 20-person hot tub. Yeah, it sounds pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, that was the culture. That's what kind of caused people to look further than what's just like right here in front of you.
Yeah.
And they even talk about brainstorming sessions. I call them, and I actually wrote this in my book, it's called the Impossible Brainstorming Session, where you sit down and you start thinking of whatever services that you're doing, whatever business that you're in. You start thinking of the impossible, okay? Yeah. You start thinking of, like I'll give you an example. They even said big corporations would do this, like McDonald's. And one of the things that they came up with in a meeting was that people would pull their cars up and somehow they would shoot your order into your car with a cannon. And then boom, it would land like right there on your lap.
Yeah.
Perfect, all right? Mm-hmm. So who knows? Maybe that brainstorming session made one guy sit across from him and say, well, how about we just create 2 lanes? You know what I mean? Like, when you end up pushing the threshold of reality in your own mind, number one, you might stumble upon some shit that's actually fucking possible, very possible.
When you talk about shooting the cannon or something, that's almost like a drive-through when you go to the bank, the thing that,
the thing that comes down.
Yeah.
But they were talking about like an actual rocket launcher, like boom, like shooting it to the car.
That sounds like something that you would have came up with.
Yeah. And, I was talking to Rick Hammer, which is, he's a gentleman who I trained.
Yeah.
And,
just a really
good guy. He had some medical things that came along, but I'm not going to, I know Rick wouldn't want me to bum you out on that because he's doing really well now.
Yeah.
So he works for the railroad, and thank God that he never left the railroad because he had really good insurance and it's helped him through this entire time. Mm-hmm. And, long story short, they're doing some things financially, but he's going into PDR full time here eventually. His health is back. He's moving forward, right? And I was actually talking to him, and I was like, man, you pretty busy? You're at the railroad. He goes, oh yeah, the railroad's cranking right now. And he told me, he was like, he said, we always said if the railroad got slow, then there's some real fucking problems out there.
Yeah.
There's some like real problems if the railroad actually gets slow because they're carrying freight everywhere where they're picking up in trucks and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when me and him started talking about the impossible sessions. And I came up with an idea that you could take whatever freight it was and like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, shrink it down into little packages and mail it. And then when it got there, you could hit it with that Honey, I Shrunk the Kid like laser beam thing and boom, blow it up into its original size.
Oh. Hey, didn't they do something on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Like, not the original one, but the one Johnny Depp was in, about the whole thing where they zapped them and then they were able to be in... Wait, is that on the original one, too?
Could be.
Into the TV? You remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then they were able to take, like, something from the TV and bring it out and be like the candy bar, like it would be little. And
but everything always fucked up in Willy Wonka, and he'd be like, all right, we'll let the, what were they called? The Oompa Loompas take care of it. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Love that movie.
Well, there's nobody who came up to that movie that wasn't fucking doing drugs.
Well, yeah, I mean, even the part where they're going through the tunnel and all that, like, crazy shit's going on, and he's got this crazy look in his eyes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I'll be honest with you guys. Nowadays, I'd be scared shitless to do any kind of LSD or anything like that.
Yeah, because you don't know. Like, it's probably got a bunch of shit in it that it just
hurt you real bad. Joe Rogan has a podcast out there with a guy who runs a big supplement company, and I don't remember the name of the company, but if you actually Google Joe Rogan's best podcast, he's got this one out there where this guy goes on what's called an ayahuasca pillage.
Yeah.
And he goes into South America where apparently they have these jungle retreats where you get to pick different shaman and you take ayahuasca. And from my understanding, you can pick different shamans based on religious preference.
Yeah.
And this guy that was on the Joe Rogan podcast ended up picking that shaman that they called the Red Dragon.
Oh my.
And they called him the Red Dragon because it's going to get fucking intense.
I bet.
And from my understanding, though, anybody who has ever done ayahuasca, it makes you feel like you want to kill yourself the first time that you do it. Because every fear that we have inside of our hearts,
It's bringing it all to light.
it will bring it all to light.
Oh my.
And you have to either gain acceptance over it,
Yeah.
accept it, and say, you know what? Let's just give an example. If you're scared of dying of cancer,
Yeah.
right? Because
Mhm.
maybe you had a family member and other family members. So in the back of your mind, you're living your entire life in fear that one day you're going to die of cancer.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not so apparent to you even. It's something maybe in your subconscious. It's not even something you
Yeah.
think about. That shit will bring that to the forefront, make it stare you in the face, and it'll say, you're dying of cancer now. And then you have to look at it and say, all right, man, well, I'm going to live the best life that I'm going to live, and I'm going to embrace. You have to fully embrace it, and then
Yeah.
it'll shoot you out and take you on to the next one. And it'll take you on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And there's actually people that say that it's like 10 years worth of therapy in one night,
That's crazy.
which is very, very crazy. And the dude on Joe Rogan podcast, which you should really listen to this
How
podcast.
long does that stuff last?
I think it lasts like all night long.
I mean, is it like 8 to 10 hours?
Oh, yeah, something like that. Probably 8 to 10, maybe 12 hours.
Whew. Man,
And
that's a
apparently
long
the
time.
shaman's there to like guide you through it. You know, they actually slowly drink it. Like they give you like a big dose, but while they're doing it, they slowly drink it throughout the whole thing.
Wait a minute, they're drinking the stuff too.
Yeah.
Oh.
And apparently to them, it's a job, you know. I
So
mean,
they're
it's-
giving you the full shot. Like, go
Yeah.
ahead, take all this shit.
And he was saying the crazy part about it, I guess, where he went to this ayahuasca pillage, it was out in the middle of a jungle where you only got 4 hours worth of power. So they had generators. And then he said about the time that it kicked in, all of a sudden you hear clank, power gone. And you're in this dark jungle with just fire, you know what I mean? And you're in with this shaman. And he said next thing you know, people just started vomiting. Like, apparently it makes you vomit. And then some lady,
you're probably like in a totally different state of mind.
people
You don't
start
give a
going into
shit.
full blow, like they'll go to where like they're a little kid again. And he was saying that there was a lady in there that kept saying, I don't know if I shit myself or I shit myself.
I was just
So people would like shit theirself
Oh
during the
my.
experience.
Can you imagine coming out of that and then next thing you know, you look down and you're like,
You shit yourself.
I just fucking shit my pants in front of all these people.
But the funny thing is, he goes on to talk about the second night where after he cleansed himself of all that bad shit,
Yeah.
how it just took him almost into something that was that of a natural, like a space of heaven, you know,
Yeah, like a
like
utopia.
a utopia type situation.
I would be down for that. I don't want to be down
You
for all the
have
bad
to get
st-
past the
I
bad shit
know.
first,
I know.
you know.
People don't die from that stuff, do
I
they?
think that's I think that's the lesson that we all got to learn in our life, you know, is that facing the bad shit is important. You know,
no,
I
it
think
absolutely is.
I've said this before in some previous podcasts that you can literally live your entire life like you wouldn't go a day if you had a toothache. Like if you had a toothache, you wouldn't go one day without freaking the fuck out and having it fixed, getting an appointment, getting some meds to get you by until you got that fucker yanked or whatever needed to happen.
Yeah.
You would literally find a way. If you didn't have money, you would find money. I mean, that is just something that you consider urgent.
Yeah.
However, people will live with pain in their heart and their minds their entire life without doing one fucking thing about it.
That's true.
You know, and we're talking about, you know, attending to your physical body much more with much more intention than you do with your spiritual.
Yeah.
You know, your spirit side, the spirit side of yourself, your energy, things like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's like I'm listening to a Jen book. How is it? How to Be a Badass?
Yeah.
That's the name of it, right? So like
No, you are a badass.
You are a badass. So I listened to it like last year, you know, like working on my mental state. And I listened to it now this year, and it's crazy how far, like, the work that I've actually done on myself, that when I'm listening to it now, it has a totally different meaning. Like
Sure.
something even more, like something,
Yeah. Well, you know, and every time you listen, I listen to the, I've talked about this in previous podcast, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. I listen to that all the time, like maybe 3 times a month.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to it even as frequent as a couple times a week. I honestly really should, because of the way that it makes me feel. Like, I base that off of the way that I feel afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's the one book that puts me into a state of abundance, and it puts me into the feeling of abundance, the feeling of, there is no scarcity, there is no pain. It puts you into this abundant state. And every time, and the book is only about an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Every time that I listen to it, I hear something different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is something that comes out, and almost like an aha moment every fucking time. And I'm telling you guys, I listen to this book. I was listening a couple times a week, and now listen to it 3 times a month or something like that. I just listened to it as soon as it was last week sometime I listened to it. I think it was on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard something new. Like,
Yeah.
something hits me every time.
That's like a big thing. I think a lot of us, we've all been there before. I definitely been there, to where you get so wrapped up in the emotion, like your emotions. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You get so wrapped up into it that you don't like really see what's going on. And like John and I, we've talked, and I'm like, it's like I'm finally getting to the point where I'm getting like my head straight. And I
Right.
think a lot of us, like, you get wrapped up into the emotion or into the drama and stuff like that. And it's like, now I finally realize, like, you take a step back and you're like, that's not even really worth it. That's not even what life is supposed to be about. Like, you got to get your shit in check.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, another thing that even growing up, you always hear the thing about getting even with someone, right?
Sure.
And, I felt that way the longest time, where I'm like, oh my God, they did some fucked up shit. I'm going to go ahead and get fucking even with them. Like, I'm going to go ahead and do something 10 times worse to that individual, to that
Right.
person, right? And then in the book Relentless, when I listened to that, it's like he talked about it, and one day it clicked. And he even said, he's like, getting even with someone, you're staying on that same level.
Right.
And you're not supposed to do that at all.
Winners don't think about getting even with people. You don't. It's not your driving force. You think about being the best you can ever possibly fucking be.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. And another thing I want to tell you guys about, a book I want to recommend, is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's called The Mastery of Life. And he's also got one called Self-Reliance. And what I love about these books, these 2 books specifically, is that they were written a long time ago, and they're very hard to understand. But when you fucking understand something, it's like each and every time a light goes off, and you have this moment of like deep understanding.
It's an amazing feeling, too.
And there's like half the shit I'll listen to what he's saying, and I'll be like, I don't know where he's going with this one. But then I could listen to the second time, he could say the same thing, and then I would get it all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I would say the Bible is like that. I mean, whether you like the Bible or not, when you read it, and I read it for quite a long time. I listened to it for quite a long time. I mean, years and years and years. And all of a sudden, you'll hear a verse in the Bible, and you'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be years that you didn't understand it, like years that you didn't understand it, and then bam, you'll fucking get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like shit like that.
Yeah.
It causes you to think.
Yeah, and it's like when the time is right, that's when you'll understand something that you didn't previously understand, and you're just like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
And if you guys haven't looked into what they want to call self-reliance, if you haven't read anything or listened to anything about Ralph Waldo Emerson, I definitely highly recommend it. I mean, it basically sums things up as, in society, we're taught to do everything as a herd, The problem with that is the mass is mindless. The mass is fucking mindless. And, as a whole, we are not very intelligent at all. The only hope that we have is to people to actually fall into themselves and develop inner individual intelligence.
Yeah.
This way, we don't fall into the herd mentality.
Yeah.
This way, we're not easy to comply or to, when we talk about the herd, I always think about the Indians, how they used to gather buffalo. And what they would do is they would get a herd of buffalo and they would herd them towards a cliff. And when they ran them off the edge of a cliff, they would have other Indians down there at the bottom with spears stabbing them and killing them, right?
Yeah.
And they would pack them up and take them. It was a hunting technique, okay?
Mhm.
I want you guys to think about, the world that we live in today, that we've got a lot of fucking buffalo out there. And the problem with being herded as a herd of buffalo towards the edge of a cliff is that buffalo herds, they're so tight together that one buffalo has its head shoved so far up the other buffalo's ass, okay?
Mhm.
So literally, buffalo's got their fucking heads shoved up the other buffalo's ass so far that they can't see above, that they're getting ready to shove each other off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah. Something that I've told Jonathan, I've told him this his entire life. Like he's getting ready to graduate, but like I've told him his entire life, I'm like, Jonathan, I was like, question everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, if it's something that I even told you or your dad tells you or a teacher that told you or whatever, I'm like, you question everything because I want you to be able to think for yourself. I don't want somebody to tell you how to think. I want you to be able to think for yourself. And I think like in this day and age, like the shit that's going on, there's like so many people that will just go ahead and do whatever the government or the media is telling them to do. And then, with me, myself, I'm just like, I just wish people would just take a step. I mean, whatever they're wanting to do, like, that's fine. I don't give a shit. But I just wish people would question things more nowadays.
And let me ask you guys a question. How in the fuck do you guys think the government is going to properly be able to advise our health when the motherfuckers can't even figure out if milk is good for the body? Like literally, my whole life, like when I was growing up, oh, milk is good for you. And then later on, milk is bad for you. Yeah. Oh, no, it's good for you. We got another scientific study. It's bad. It's good. It's bad. It's good. It's bad. It's good.
They do that stuff
Dude,
all the time
fuck
with everything.
y'all, man. How about if I drink some fucking milk and I decide whether it's good for me or not based on the way I fucking feel about it?
Yeah.
How about that, motherfucker? You know what I mean? You don't have to tell me whether milk's good for me or not because I'll fucking drink the shit and I will base it off the way I fucking feel when I drink it. You know what? You don't have to tell me if a fucking potato is good for me, motherfucker. I will eat a potato and decide if it makes me feel good after I fucking eat it. How about that, dickhead? No, I don't need to know if a carrot's good for me, okay?
Yeah.
It tastes like shit, so it's probably good for me. So there. It's just the problem we have out here in society is like all of these fucking sheep just following each other.
Yeah.
And just, doing whatever they're told, man, because it's what they're told. It's like don't question authority. Don't question, man. Like, I don't know, I could go on and on, guys, with government rants and shit like that, and I'm not really a big conspiracy theorist because I don't give a fuck. I spend more time inner self-developing. I mean, this is my message. My message is develop yourself. Mm-hmm. Invest in yourself. Strengthen yourself. Strengthen the knowledge. Like, don't let people just take your fucking mind. There's like a fight out there for your mind. You don't get this. Like fucking Fox News is fighting for your mind.
Yeah.
CNN is fighting for your mind. Whatever. ABC News. I don't even know whatever other news outlet there is. There's TV shows that are fighting for your mind.
Yeah.
Everybody's fighting for your eyeballs. Okay. Take it back. Take your mind back. And make clear-cut decisions to invest in that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Strengthen it. Empower yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Become a better version of yourself. Okay? And honestly, I don't think that's what they want because if they did want that, they would be teaching people that in schools.
Exactly.
And the thing is about schools were not designed to help you succeed. They were designed to stop you from completely failing. And really probably just make a decent drone-style employee.
Exactly.
Where you would go to work, you would pay your taxes, you would help fuel the system that
wouldn't question anything. Wouldn't be a rebel.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the way they want you to live your life.
They do. Bob Marley's, I mean, he's sung about it for, I mean, you listen to his music, you know, like now, and everything, all the shit that's going on today, it's like, it makes total sense. You know what I'm saying?
His music was based off timeless principles.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, everybody needs to be their own hero.
That's right.
You know, you can't be a victim, and you can't sit there and be like, oh, all this shit happened to me and nobody was here for me. That's life. Do you know what I'm saying? You got to be your own person to deal with whatever's going on for yourself and be the best version for yourself.
Well, guys, that's the problem with being the victim, okay? Is that you disarm yourself from actually correcting the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that you push the problem off on I'd like to be successful, but my wife just holds me down, right? So now you've got a crutch. It's outside of yourself. The power to be successful is put in somebody else's hands. You no longer have control over that shit.
Yeah.
Accept everything as you have the fucking control to change it. You are 100% responsible, and I don't give a fuck what it is. Like, I don't care if somebody shoots you in the face. Accept it as your responsibility. It wasn't them that did it to you. You did it to you.
Because in all honesty, no matter how bad the situation is, there's always a wonderful lesson to be learned out of it. And if you go towards more the positive instead of the negative, it's going to make you more of an amazing individual.
Yeah, and if you got control over it, you actually got the ability to change it and to make it happen.
Yeah.
You know,
I
rather than being you have direction rather than being a piece of driftwood just floating down the river, hitting and bumping everything. And, and you're getting pulled by the tide, you know, or even worse, swimming up tide, swimming in the opposite direction, fighting life, you know, what do you call that when you swim? One fucking arm swim thing at a time?
I don't know. I'm not a swimmer.
One fucking paddle at a goddamn time.
And it's exhausting. It's exhausting when you do that shit. And it doesn't make life enjoyable. And it sucks all your energy away. And then you're just kind of like, you know?
That's it. Yep. And y'all, I think we done finished this podcast.
Yes.
All right, everybody. So anyhow, get out there and do your fucking thing, y'all.
Yeah.
Get out there and become bigger and better versions of yourself day in and day out. Invest in yourself. Invest in your mind. I just love it. I know the people that listen to this podcast, I know you guys are that type because you guys have been listening to me talk about this for a long time. And anytime I meet one of you guys who listen to our podcast and, I've had plenty of people tell me that we said something or we done something to change their life. I love that. That's why we're doing it, you know, and that's it, y'all. Appreciate you.
Get out there and be your own hero.
Yep. And for all you fucktards that are listening, just to listen to me just to wait for me to slip up or something like that. Oh shit, man! Come on, guys. I just told everybody how I used to do all kinds of drugs. I'm not afraid of fucking slipping up.
Yeah.
Even if I did, I'd own it and I'd just move the fuck on.
That's right, right?
So anyhow, everybody, we appreciate you. We'll see you on the next one.
Hey.
Yep.
Ain't you supposed to say something? And I'm supposed to no, I say bang, bang.
Pew, pew.
There we go.
All right.